January 18th, 1966. 23 feet below, Cu Chi District, South Vietnam. The beam from specialist Jimmy Thornton's flashlight cuts through absolute darkness, catching particles of red clay dust suspended in air so thick it coats your throat with every breath. He's been underground for 47 minutes, longer than regulation allows, longer than the batteries in his light are rated for, but the tunnel keeps going. Behind him, the entrance shaft is a memory. Ahead, the narrow passage curves left into more darkness. Thornton is 22 years old, 5'6", 138 pounds. In the world above, these dimensions made him unremarkable. Down here, they make him a tunnel rat, one of the few Americans small enough to squeeze through passages built for Vietnamese frames. His uniform is soaked through. The temperature hovers around 90 degrees, humidity near 100%. No ventilation, no backup, no room to turn around. He inches forward on his elbows, the M1911 pistol in his right hand, flashlight in his left. The tunnel is barely wider than his shoulders. Every few feet he stops, listening. The VC who built these passages were masters of acoustic deception, false tunnels, echo chambers, anything to disorient and trap. 3 weeks ago, a tunnel rat from the 25th Infantry Division disappeared in a complex just 2 kilometers north. They never found him. The clay walls press in from all sides. Thornton's breathing sounds impossibly loud in the confined space. He pushes forward another body length, then another. The tunnel widens slightly, enough to shift from his belly to his knees. His flashlight beam sweeps left, right, down. That's when he sees it. The tunnel opens into a chamber, not large, maybe 8 feet across, 6 feet high, but after the claustrophobic passage, it feels vast. Thornton crawls forward, every instinct screaming caution. His light plays across the chamber walls. The earthen floor looks disturbed, uneven. Something about the shadows is wrong. He shifts his weight forward. The floor gives way beneath him, not collapsing, moving. A section of earth the size of a car hood tilts downward on some kind of pivot mechanism. Thornton throws himself backward, his shoulders slamming into the tunnel wall. The platform swings down, and in the beam of his dropped flashlight, he sees what was hidden beneath. Punji stakes, dozens of them, sharpened bamboo spears, each one 18 inches long, angled upward at 45 degrees. But these aren't the crude traps found in the jungle. Each stake is carved with precision, the points fire-hardened to stone-like hardness. The tips glisten, covered in something dark and wet. Excrement. The VC coated them with human waste to guarantee infection, to ensure that even a shallow puncture would become a death sentence in the jungle heat. But it's what holds them that stops Thornton's breath. The stakes are mounted on platforms, wooden frames that sit on springs. Actual springs, salvaged from truck suspensions or machinery. The platforms are held down by the false floor above, compressed, loaded with tension. When weight triggers the mechanism, the platforms don't just expose the stakes, they launch them upward. Thornton's flashlight beam shakes as he retrieves it. He angles the light into the pit. There are 4 separate platforms, each loaded with stakes, each aimed at a different angle to maximize coverage. If he'd committed his full weight, if he'd crawled into the chamber instead of testing the ground first, the stakes would have driven up through his chest, his abdomen, his face. The springs would have provided enough force to punch through bone. He lies motionless in the tunnel, his heart hammering, trying to process what he's looking at. This isn't a trap. This is engineering. This is a weapon system designed specifically to kill tunnel rats. Someone studied how Americans move through these passages, how they enter chambers, where they place their weight. Someone designed a machine to exploit that knowledge. Thornton keys his radio twice, the signal that he's alive but can't talk. He begins inching backward, moving with glacial care, knowing that if there's one trap, there will be others. The chamber floor that hasn't collapsed could hide more triggers. The walls could conceal crossbows or poison darts. Even the air could be wrong. VC engineers had been known to seal chambers and pump in smoke from burning chili peppers, suffocating anyone who entered. As he retreats down the tunnel, dragging himself backward on his elbows, one thought dominates his mind. They've been waiting for us. They knew we were coming. Thornton emerges from the tunnel entrance 40 minutes later, clay-caked and shaking. Captain Robert Macy is waiting at the shaft opening, along with Sergeant First Class Williams and 3 other tunnel rats from the 1st Squadron, 4th Cavalry. The January sun feels like a physical assault after the underground darkness. Thornton blinks against the light, pulls off his canvas gloves, and tries to speak. His mouth is too dry. Williams hands him a canteen. "What did you find?" Thornton drinks, wipes his mouth, drinks again. "We need to shut this down, right now." Macy's expression hardens. "Explain." "There's a chamber 20 meters in, spring-loaded punji platforms, 4 of them designed to launch when you enter." Thornton's hands are still shaking. "Sir, this isn't like anything we've seen. They built it for us, specifically for tunnel clearance." Macy exchanges a look with Williams. "In the 6 months since tunnel operations intensified at Kuchai, they've encountered hundreds of traps, tripwires, pressure plates, scorpions, and jars rigged to break when disturbed. But spring-loaded mechanisms represent a different level of sophistication. Springs mean metallurgy. They mean engineering specifications. They mean the VC aren't just adapting anymore, they're innovating. We need to document it," Macy says. "Get the engineers down here. Nobody else goes in until we understand what we're dealing with." By 1400 hours, 3 combat engineers arrive from battalion headquarters, along with a captain from intelligence named Fraser, who brings a camera and measurement tools. Thornton briefs them topside, sketching the chamber layout in the red dirt with a stick. The engineers listen in silence, their faces growing more serious with each detail. "I want to see it," Fraser says. Williams shakes his head. "Sir, with respect, you're not tunnel qualified. I know what it is, Sergeant. But if this is what Specialist Thornton describes, we need photographic evidence. We need measurements. And we need it today, because if there's one chamber like this, there's going to be others." They go in pairs, Thornton leading, Fraser following, with Williams behind them as backup. The descent takes 30 minutes, moving at a crawl. Thornton navigates by memory now, counting the distance, warning Fraser about low overhangs and sharp turns. The air grows thicker. The darkness presses in like something alive. When they reach the chamber entrance, Thornton stops. It's just ahead. The floor trigger is approximately 2 feet from the passage opening. "Stay behind me." He edges forward into the chamber space, keeping his weight distributed, testing each inch of ground. The false floor section that nearly killed him earlier is still tilted down, the punji platforms visible in the pit below. Fraser's flashlight beam illuminates what Thornton saw before, and more. In the fuller light of 2 flashlights, the sophistication becomes clear. The springs aren't crude salvage. They're cut to specific lengths, calibrated to provide precise upward force. The wooden platforms are fitted with metal brackets, professionally machined, not improvised. Each punji stake is positioned at a calculated angle, creating overlapping kill zones that would turn the chamber into an inescapable trap. But it's what Fraser notices next that changes everything. "Thornton, angle your light to the left wall, the upper left." Thornton shifts his beam. Cut into the clay wall, barely visible, is a small recess, maybe 6 inches across, 4 inches deep. Inside the recess sits a glass jar filled with dark liquid. Wires lead from the jar to the floor mechanism. "Don't move," Fraser breathes. "Don't move a goddamn inch." "What is it?" "Battery acid. There's a glass jar of battery acid rigged to the trap mechanism." Fraser's voice is tight, controlled. "If the floor trigger fails, if someone is light enough to not trip it, or if they test the ground like you did, there's a backup. Those wires run to a tripwire at knee height. If you enter the chamber upright, you break the wire. The jar tips. The acid spills onto the springs and metal components." Thornton understands immediately. Battery acid on metal creates hydrogen gas. In a sealed underground chamber with no ventilation, hydrogen gas builds up fast. Any spark, from metal striking metal, from a flashlight switch, from the discharge of static electricity, would ignite it. "They designed it to kill us 2 ways, Thornton says. "The stakes if you crawl in, the explosion if you walk in." 3 ways, Williams says from the tunnel behind them. His flashlight illuminates the chamber's ceiling, wooden boards, carefully fitted between clay supports. Too carefully fitted. "The explosion would collapse the ceiling. Even if the fire doesn't kill you, you'd be buried alive?" For several seconds, nobody speaks. The only sound is their breathing and the distant drip of water somewhere in the tunnel network. 3 experienced soldiers, men who have faced enemy fire and ambushes and every conventional danger of jungle warfare, stand motionless in the darkness, staring at a trap that represents something new. This isn't guerrilla warfare. This is counterinsurgency warfare, designed specifically to counter American counterinsurgency tactics. The VC have studied tunnel rats the way a hunter studies prey. They know how we move, how we think, what equipment we carry, what mistakes we make, and they've built a machine to exploit all of it. Fraser takes photographs, his camera flash illuminating the chamber in stark bursts of light. Each photo captures another detail. The spring tension, the wire routing, the acid jar, the ceiling supports. Evidence, documentation. Proof that the war underground has entered a new phase. "We need to pull back," Macy's voice crackles over the radio. "Battalion wants a full brief by 1700 hours. Extraction now." They withdraw slowly, methodically, testing every inch of tunnel as they retreat. It takes 90 minutes to cover the distance that Thornton had traversed in 47. When they finally emerge into daylight, the sun is lower, the shadows longer. Thornton sits on the edge of the entrance shaft, his legs dangling into darkness, and realizes his hands have finally stopped shaking. Williams sits beside him. "You know what this means, right?" Thornton nods. "We can't clear tunnels the same way anymore." "We can't clear tunnels at all," Williams says. "Not until we figure out how to beat this." By 1800 hours, every tunnel rat operation in Kuchai district receives a stand-down order. The tunnels that have swallowed countless man-hours, that have cost American lives, that have frustrated every attempt at pacification, they're being temporarily ceded back to the enemy. Not because of superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but because of springs, bamboo, and battery acid arranged in a configuration that 22-year-old Jimmy Thornton almost walked into. The briefing room at 25th Infantry Division headquarters is packed by 1900 hours. Officers from 4 different battalions crowd around a field table where Fraser has spread his photographs. Under harsh fluorescent light, the images look even worse than the reality. Stark black and white documentation of a weapon system that shouldn't exist in a guerrilla war. Colonel Henderson, Division Intelligence Officer, studies each photograph in silence. He's a veteran of Korea, experienced in tunnel fighting from the battles around Seoul, but Korea's tunnels were military excavations, defensive positions with structural supports and logical layouts. Kuchai is something else entirely. 300 kilometers of passages hand-dug through red clay, connecting villages and base camps and supply caches in a subterranean network that intelligence still doesn't fully understand. "Walk me through it again," Henderson says. "From the beginning." Thornton stands at attention, still wearing his clay-stained fatigues, and describes the chamber. As he talks, Henderson makes notes on a tactical map of the Kuchai district. Red circles mark known tunnel entrances. Blue circles mark suspected entrances. The circles overlap and connect like a spider's web across the map. "How many men have we sent into these tunnels in the last 6 months?" Henderson asks. Major Carlisle, operations officer, checks his roster. 43 tunnel rats across all units. We've conducted 217 tunnel clearing operations since August. Casualties? 7 KIA, 14 wounded, 5 unaccounted for. Carlisle's voice falters on the last number. Unaccounted for means disappeared, men who entered tunnels and never emerged, their bodies still somewhere in the darkness beneath Kuchai. Henderson sets down his pen. "And in all those operations, we never encountered anything like this chamber?" "No, sir," Macy says. "Standard traps, yes, tripwires, deadfalls, punji pits at tunnel entrances, but nothing with this level of mechanical sophistication, nothing that required metallurgy and engineering." Fraser taps one of the photographs. "Sir, I think we need to consider the possibility that this isn't an isolated incident. The precision of this trap design suggests development time, testing, refinement, implementation. This isn't improvised. This is deployed technology." The implications settle over the room like a physical weight. If Fraser is right, if the trap chamber represents a standardized design rather than a one-off innovation, then every tunnel in Kuchai could be compromised. Every operation up to this point has been based on the assumption that VC tunnels, while dangerous, follow predictable patterns. Find the entrance, send in the tunnel rats, clear the passages room by room until the complex is secured or destroyed. But predictable patterns work both ways. The VC have been watching American tunnel tactics for 6 months. They've seen how tunnel rats enter chambers, how they use flashlights, how they move through confined spaces, and they've designed a trap that exploits every element of that doctrine. What about the other tunnel rats? Williams asks. The ones who are unaccounted for. Is it possible they encountered chambers like this? The question hangs in the air. 5 men missing. 5 families back home waiting for news that will never come because their sons and husbands are buried in collapsed tunnels or impaled on stakes in chambers that no one will ever find. Sergeant First Class David Burke, a tunnel rat with 12 operations under his belt, speaks up from the back of the room. 3 weeks ago, I cleared a tunnel near Phu Hoa Dong. Found a chamber maybe 15 meters in. The floor felt wrong. Kind of springy, like there was something underneath. I backed out, called for engineers. By the time they arrived and we went back in, the chamber had collapsed. We assumed it was natural, clay erosion, water damage. But now we know it might have been a trap that failed, Henderson finishes, or one that partially succeeded and collapsed on its own. He turns to the wall map, studying the pattern of tunnel entrances across Cu Chi District. Gentlemen, we have a problem. We've been operating on the assumption that superior American technology and training would give us an advantage underground. But the enemy has adapted faster than we anticipated. They've studied our methods and created countermeasures specifically designed to kill tunnel rats. Captain Fraser leans forward. Sir, there's another element we need to consider. The materials in that chamber, the springs, the metal brackets, the glass jar, those came from somewhere. The VC aren't manufacturing springs in jungle workshops. They're salvaging them from captured or destroyed vehicles, from supply dumps, from equipment we've left behind. Which means they have a logistics system sophisticated enough to collect, transport, and integrate American materials into their tunnel defenses. Henderson nods slowly. So, we're not just fighting VC tunnel builders? We're fighting VC engineers who are using our own equipment against us. That's correct, sir. The briefing continues for another hour. Proposals are discussed and discarded. Should they pump CS gas into every tunnel entrance? Too risky. The tunnels are too extensive and gas could seep into civilian villages. Should they simply demolish every entrance they find? The VC will just dig new ones. Should they send in larger teams with more equipment? The tunnels are too narrow for more than one man at a time. By 2100 hours, only one conclusion seems certain. Tunnel rat operations as currently conducted are suspended indefinitely. Until new tactics are developed, until countermeasures are designed, the tunnels of Cu Chi belong to the enemy. Thornton sits in the back of the briefing room listening to officers debate strategy, watching them draw diagrams on chalkboards and argue about engineering specifications. But his mind keeps returning to that moment in the chamber, the floor giving way beneath him, the glimpse of sharpened stakes in his flashlight beam, the half-second of pure terror before his training kicked in. He'd been lucky, cautious and lucky. How many other tunnel rats would be that lucky? How many would enter chambers without testing the floor first, would trigger traps that they never saw coming, would die in darkness beneath Cu Chi while the war continued above them? After the briefing ends, Williams finds Thornton outside the headquarters building, smoking a cigarette in the humid night air. The sounds of the base surround them, generators humming, radio chatter, distant artillery fire from some engagement kilometers away. Normal war sounds, nothing like the absolute silence of the tunnels. You did good today, Williams says. You saved lives. You know that, right? Thornton takes a drag, exhales slowly. I keep thinking about Burke's chamber, the one that collapsed. How many other chambers like that have we missed? How many times have we walked past traps without knowing? That's not a productive line of thinking. Maybe not, but it's the truth. Thornton drops the cigarette, grinds it out under his boot. We've been going into those tunnels for 6 months like we own them, like they're just holes in the ground that we can clear and move on, but they're not. They're a weapon system, and we've been walking into the weapon. Williams doesn't argue. They stand in silence, watching the base lights flicker against the darkness of the jungle beyond the perimeter. Somewhere out there, beneath the red clay soil, the tunnels of Cu Chi extend for hundreds of kilometers. And in those tunnels, VC engineers are probably building more chambers, more traps, more innovations designed to kill the next American who comes crawling through the darkness. The war underground has changed, and every tunnel rat on base knows it. February 12th, 1966. 25 days after the chamber discovery, the training pit at Cu Chi Base has been dug 30 feet deep and lined with plywood to simulate tunnel conditions. Inside, Specialist Thornton crouches in artificial darkness while Captain Macy and 3 engineers from the 65th Engineer Battalion watch from above. What they're testing today could determine whether tunnel rat operations ever resume, or whether the tunnels remain permanently ceded to the enemy. Thornton carries new equipment, a telescoping pole with a mirror attached, borrowed from explosive ordnance disposal teams and modified for tunnel work. A canvas bag of marbles that can be rolled ahead to test floor stability, a length of parachute cord with a grappling hook fashioned from bent nails. None of it is standard issue. All of it has been improvised in the last 3 weeks by tunnel rats who refuse to let fear win. Beginning approach to simulated chamber, Thornton says, his voice echoing in the training pit. He extends the mirror pole ahead of him, angling it to view the floor before committing his weight. The engineers above have constructed a replica trap based on Fraser's photographs, spring-loaded platforms, pressure triggers, the works. If Thornton's new techniques fail, he'll find out in a controlled environment rather than 20 meters underground with no backup. He rolls 3 marbles ahead. They clatter across the plywood floor, disappearing into the chamber. No sound of impact with stakes, no trigger activation. The floor might be stable, or the marbles might be too light to trip the mechanism. Thornton inches forward, using the mirror to scan the chamber walls. The engineers have added refinements based on intelligence from captured VC, fake ventilation holes that conceal crossbow bolts, innocent-looking support beams rigged to collapse when disturbed. Every trap represents something that could exist in real tunnels beneath Cu Chi. Contact left wall, Thornton reports. Possible wire at knee height, backing out to deploy hook. He retreats 2 body lengths, then throws the grappling hook into the chamber. It catches on something, the wire, hopefully, not a structural support. Thornton pulls, the wire snaps, a glass jar tips somewhere in the darkness, spilling liquid, but there's no explosion, no collapse. The engineers have used water instead of battery acid, but the principle is proven. The wire was there. The trap was real, and Thornton detected it before entering. This is the new doctrine emerging from 3 weeks of intensive development. Assume every chamber is trapped, test before entering, never trust what you can see. It's slower than the old methods. A tunnel that took 40 minutes to clear now takes 3 hours. But slow tunnel rats come home alive. By mid-February, the new techniques are ready for field testing. Macy selects a tunnel complex near Pu Mai Hung, one that intelligence has identified as low priority, likely abandoned. If the new tactics work here, they'll be rolled out across all tunnel operations. If they fail, Henderson has already prepared paperwork to formally suspend tunnel rat operations indefinitely. Thornton volunteers for the first real test. Williams argues against it. Thornton's already been through enough, already faced the chamber that started this whole evolution. But Thornton insists. He discovered the threat. He helped develop the countermeasures. He needs to see it through. February 16th, 800 hours. The tunnel entrance is a 3-foot hole concealed beneath a farmer's hut in a village that American forces secured 2 days earlier. The farmer and his family are long gone, melted into the civilian population, or retreated deeper into VC-controlled territory. All that remains is the hole and whatever lies beneath. Thornton goes in alone. That hasn't changed. The tunnels are still too narrow for multiple operators, but now he carries the mirror pole, the marbles, the hook, and something else, a small canary in a bamboo cage. The bird is a miner's trick, centuries old, repurposed for Vietnam. If the air goes bad, if there's poison gas or insufficient oxygen or hydrogen buildup, the canary will show symptoms before a human does. The descent takes 2 hours. Every chamber is tested. Every floor is probed. The marbles become an early warning system. The mirror reveals hidden wires. The hook disrupts traps from a safe distance. It's exhausting, nerve-wracking work. But when Thornton emerges at 10:30 hours, he's alive and uninjured. 4 chambers, he reports to Macy. 2 were trapped. punji platforms just like the first one. I disrupted both with the hook technique. The complex is clear." Macy nods, but there's no celebration. Clear doesn't mean victory. It means survival. It means the new doctrine works. Barely, slowly, at tremendous psychological cost to the men who crawl through darkness testing for traps that want to kill them. Over the next month, tunnel rat operations resume across Cu Chi District. The casualty rate drops, not to zero, but to something approaching acceptable. The VC continue to innovate, adding new trap configurations, but American countermeasures evolve alongside them. It becomes a deadly game of innovation and counter-innovation, played in darkness beneath the Vietnamese soil. Thornton conducts 17 more tunnel operations before his rotation ends in May 1966. He never encounters another trap as sophisticated as the first chamber, but he finds plenty that come close. Snake pits with trip-release doors, punji balls suspended on hair triggers, chambers that flood with water when entered. Each one is documented, photographed, analyzed. The intelligence feeds back into training, into doctrine, into the evolving science of tunnel warfare. Years later, after the war ends and the casualty reports are declassified, the numbers tell their own story. In the 6 months before Thornton's discovery, tunnel rat casualties in Cu Chi District ran at nearly 15% per operation. In the 6 months after new tactics were implemented, casualties dropped to 4%. The spring-loaded chamber and Thornton's survival of it saved an estimated 37 American lives. But there's another number that never makes it into official reports. 5 men, unaccounted for, who entered tunnels before January 18, 1966, and never emerged. Men who might have encountered chambers like Thornton's but didn't back out in time, didn't test the floor, didn't have the training or equipment or luck to survive. Their names are carved on the wall in Washington. Their bodies remain somewhere beneath Cu Chi in chambers that have long since collapsed or been sealed by VC engineers covering their tracks. They are the cost of learning, the price of adaptation in a war where the enemy evolved faster than doctrine could keep pace. Thornton returns to the United States in June 1966. He never talks about the tunnels with his family, never describes the chamber or the stakes or the moment when the floor gave way beneath him. Some experiences live only in darkness, shared only with others who have been underground, who understand what it means to crawl through enemy territory armed with nothing but a pistol and a flashlight. But on January 18th every year he thinks about that day, about the decision to test the floor instead of trusting it, about the pure chance that kept him alive while others died, about the war beneath the war, fought in absolute darkness by men who measured their survival in inches and seconds. The tunnels of Cu Chi still exist. Some have been preserved as tourist attractions, sanitized and lit with electric lights, wide enough for Western visitors to walk through without crouching. The trap chambers have been removed or disabled. The history has been simplified into narratives of Vietnamese ingenuity and American frustration. But the real history, the spring-loaded platforms, the battery acid triggers, the mechanical precision of death machines built specifically to kill tunnel clearance teams, that history lives only in declassified reports and the memories of men like Thornton. Men who learned that innovation happens on both sides of a war, and that sometimes survival depends on nothing more than testing the ground before you commit your weight. The tunnels taught that lesson in the cruelest way possible. But for those who learned it and lived, the knowledge became something else, a reminder that in warfare's darkest spaces, caution and adaptation matter more than courage or firepower. Thornton survived because he was careful. Others survived because he was. And in the mathematics of war, that's as close to victory as anyone underground ever gets.